Larry Baker here from the University of Minnesota, who's going to be talking about stormwater research and where we stand on that. And he is currently research professor at the Department of Bioproducts and Biosystems Engineering at the University of Minnesota, and recently faculty affiliate with the International Center for Global Change, also at the University of Minnesota. I was looking a little bit at your website so I could be prepared to introduce you. And Larry describes himself as focusing on human ecosystems, cities and farms, and he likes to work in what he calls Pasteur's quadrant, which I thought was very interesting, moving between theory and application. He describes himself and his research as being highly interdisciplinary, and so I was looking a little bit at what he's done. And just as evidence of that, he's been involved in some really interesting things. He has been involved in the creation of a Parkinson's disease registry and initial studies to address its causes and genetic susceptibility, all of which sounds like a seminar all of its own. And has also been involved in waste not closing the loop on organics waste in the Twin Cities. And so he's been involved in a whole lot of different things, including being a Fulbright senior specialist in 2009 for the International Institute of Water and Environmental Engineering in Burkina Faso. So Larry comes to us with a very wide range of experience. So today he's going to talk to us about stormwater research roadmap for Minnesota. And with that, I'm going to give it over to you, Larry.
Okay, thanks. I'm going to start by going around the room and get your names. Just quickly, I guess, and maybe just your involvement in stormwater real quickly. So I'll start with you.
Bill Dunn, Municipal Stormwater Financial Assistance.
Okay.
Caroline McFadden, MS4 program.
Which one?
The MS4.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Rachel Olmanson, I'm in the MS4 program.
Pat Engleton, no particular stormwater involvement.
Joel Peck, I'm the municipal liaison, but I have a lot of involvement either.
Kathy Odell, I'm in the Water Quality Standards Unit.
Okay, good.
I'm Bruce Henningsgard. I'm involved in trading, and we're just starting to look at stormwater for trading.
Excellent. I want to talk about that.
Sandy McDonald, data quality. I get questions about permits and that.
Okay.
I'm Nick Gervino. I work in the Impaired Waters Total Maximum Daily Load program.
I'm Matt Linden. I work in the pollutant training team, as well as do some local stuff on stormwater in my community.
Aida Mendez, I'm an industrial resident in stormwater.
Nick Nissler, I'm a construction stormwater inspector.
Okay. And online, do we have people? Can they talk to us or?
No, they cannot talk to us.
Okay, well, sorry guys. We're still hearing somebody.
I don't know if you can hear me. This is Melanie Myland with the Rochester office. I'm a municipal wastewater permit writer.
Okay.
Yes, we can hear you. I don't know why though.
Okay, so.
You know there's an echo.
Well, I think we're not going to be able to hear people. We did hear you, Rochester. Okay, well, let me start. This is a project that MBCA is funding. The money is from the Clean Water Legacy Fund. And I'll start off by noting that this is very tied into the goals of the Clean Water Legacy Program. In other words, to improve water quality. Okay, it could be other things, but it's not. That's what it is. That's what taxpayers voted to pay for, and that's what they're supposed to be doing. So there's a focus there on improving water quality. Fine. So I'm working with some people, some of you might know, John Bellata, John Chapman, and Sharam are all with Minnesota Extension. And David is our project officer, but has been working very closely with us. He comes to been kind of integral in this thing, which I find to be very, very helpful. last thing you want on an applied project is to get halfway to the end, or worse yet, to the end, and the project officer says, well, that's not what we wanted. It hasn't happened to me, but it has happened to other people that I know. Now let's see, I'm not switching here.
Oh, sorry. But you had a question.
Okay, the first question is there a need for stormwater research in the first place? And I would argue that there is. There's a gap between research results, the information to guide practitioners and decision makers. That's from a national report by the Water Environment Federation. Locally, only 15 out of 150 or so impaired waters in the metro region have been restored, so there's a long way to go, and this is largely an urban stormwater problem. This is a little dated, but I don't think it's been changed very much. And there's a sense, and this is from our sort of an accumulation of information that we have, that we're spending too much and we don't know the benefits of stormwater management. So research could fill knowledge gaps and help to improve this. If I think back, I was there when the NERP study was being done back in 1983. At least I was cognizant of the world. Think about it. We're trying to remove a suite of pollutants in stormwater ponds that are basically a hole in the ground. And there's got to be better ways to do this. We started off at least a stormwater program with the 1970s technology, and we are only slowly moving beyond that. So this is the kind of problem that we deal with. This is Joe Bishop. This is actually a talk he gave here, about 6 months ago or thereabouts. He's showing that, first of all, in Shingle Creek, they're spending a lot of money, $17 million in 13 years. And here's the trend in phosphorus, the box plot. I mean, there's really not much of a change. Why aren't things going down a lot? And even in areas where they are going down, there is some evidence, generally from the council, that there's some decrease in nutrients and such in urban flows, but it's not necessarily because of stormwater management. It could be just conversion from agriculture to urban. It could be the phosphorus fertilizer ban. It could be other things. So we really don't know. Let's see, let's do it again here.
Sorry. Just to let me know there's somebody asking questions, so if I click on the chat button, you can move.
Everything. Okay, here we go. Okay. This is another example here. This is for the Chesapeake Bay, all these red dots, all these monitoring stations. These are calculated loads. This is from wastewater treatment and removal of combined sewer overflows. Huge reductions in phosphorus, and we see the same thing here in Minnesota, 80-some%. John Stein shows that graph everywhere. The one in Minnesota, it looks very much like this. Agriculture is coming down. Now remember, this area is urbanizing too. But urban stormwater is not the same as we were in 1985 in terms of total loading. Again, that's not proof that nothing's working, but it certainly shows that it's not having a major effect in terms of water quality. Okay, now guiding principles. The other thing is, this thing isn't written for you guys. It's written for the Clean Water Council. It's written for legislators. For people who are making decisions. I mean, you're not the primary audience, I should say. So we're thinking about this in terms of governance. I've heard many comments over the years from legislators, one fairly explicit. They see research, and this was actually a liberal legislator. He had a fundraiser, a Democratic fundraiser, said that research is like pouring money down a rat hole. I go, wow, this is a well-educated person. So we're trying to put this, develop this with some good governance principles. Now, there's not a lot of theory maybe that goes behind that, but many cities, many federal governments, the UN, other people have come up with these good governance principles. So we're trying to do this in a way that appeals to legislators and such, not fellow engineers. So one of them is efficiency, the first one. Are we doing this as efficiently as possible? that generally means a cost. We had the roadmap is informed by input from a broad section of professional stakeholders throughout the state, so we're giving it legitimacy. You know, if we hadn't done that, the way we've been doing in the past, basically a bunch of researchers and a few of you guys in the watershed districts, you know, huddling in a room like this, saying, here's what you do it. Well, you're all talking the same, you're in the bubble. Okay, we got to get outside the bubble. So this is a statewide survey that we did. It'll be based on adaptive management, which gives you accountability. In other words, it will be updated periodically, and what we're proposing is this should be redone every 5 years at the same time as the Clean Water Legacy 5-year evaluation and their next 5-year plan. And it should be part of that plan. So research should be part of that plan. Not that it's going to give you information in that 5 years, but in that 5 years, you get information for the next 5 years. So this does take some time. And it will be transparent and accessible. All our data, everything else, surveys and all that will be accessible down to the raw data level. Okay, now, the idea of adaptive management. John Chapman came up with this. I had a little diagram, which I pulled out. So we have a route, using MapQuest here. This is where we think we're going here. And this might have been, you know, at some point it would have been, let's focus on nutrients. Okay, so you're going along this path, and when you get to here, and you're going along the way, and along the way you get new information that helps you improve your decision making. For example, they might say there's an accident somewhere, and you might go a different direction. And on the other hand, you might have something where they say, well, there is an accident up there, you got to go the other way. So if you think about this in terms of stormwater management 10 years ago, chloride wouldn't have been in the radar screen, or barely on the radar screen. Now it's on everybody's radar screen. So, you know, that becomes something that's important now that 10 years ago, 5 years ago even, wasn't terribly important in terms of, wasn't a priority at least. Well, I haven't so much.
Do you want me to just?
Yeah, why don't you just advance? Yeah, go ahead.
This is our new equipment. It's really good.
Yeah. Okay. Or maybe we're interfering with a meeting thing, I think.
There we go. What did you want, or?
Let me back up one. Okay.
One?
Yep. So so our methods here. First of all, we read all the various prior stormwater research documents and the surveys and such. David had done one in your department. We did a formal survey of stakeholders throughout Minnesota. This was I'll show you this in a minute. We did policy actor interviews, focus groups, and then all this was integrated into a final stormwater research roadmap. Again, think of the roadmap, not a plan, you know, not a prescription, kind of an evolving process. This is we send it out to all MS4s in the state, 400 and some, I think. The watershed management districts, the watershed management organization, county planners, and soil water conservation districts. There's a census of all these groups, not a sampling. There's extensive triangulation between questions. And let me explain that a little bit. It's very hard if you were to go to your doctor and say, boy, I've got a really bad stomachache. It's been there for days. And he doesn't say, well, you want some pills for indigestion, or should I do surgery for an ulcer? I don't know. That's why I'm coming to a doctor. I need to know that answer. Well, you ask people, what kind of research do you need? You maybe have been managing stormwater ponds or permitting or managing the maintenance or something. And you know what your problems are. You know what your barriers are. You know it's bugging you, but it's very hard to put that in terms of a research question. So in these prior surveys where people have done, suites of, you think it's better that we do 2-stage ditches or this versus this, and that's not what, people don't know what they're really answering. It's like saying, yeah, okay, operate on the ultras, not even knowing whether you have an ultra. Okay, so we have to triangulate. We're asking people questions about barriers and opportunities that they perceive. We're asking them, we're triangulating between different questions. We'll get to that when we talk about pollution trading. We didn't ask them anything about pollution trading, or at least not much. But it turns out there's maybe a real opportunity there if you triangulate between questions. And we're also not voting. You know, it's not like, oh yeah, 22 people chose this one and 18 chose this, therefore this one's a priority. There are good reasons we're looking at this through the lens of researchers, as to what our final priorities are. Okay, and we had about 150 responses to this. Move forward. We also did policy actor interviews. We looked at people who are really deeply embedded in stormwater management, usually for many years. They have very good knowledge. I don't know who those people were. We have confidentiality rules. Could be somebody in this room. And we only need 5 of these. They require, if you've never done this kind of thing, it's a social science method. It requires many, many hours of work to analyze one survey. It's done by digitizing the whole survey questions, transcriptions, and all that, and doing some elaborate computer analysis, looking at how words are grouped together and things like that. Yeah, and then the interview questions were developed with us, the 5 of us. Next. And then we did a couple focus groups, one of them down here. I think I recognize them. Was anybody in the focus groups here? Oh, okay. There's one here, one in Monticello, and one in Duluth, and one other actually. And we developed worksheets of charts and digitized that and came up with answers. Okay. So, now what I'm going to show you, because quotes aren't that interesting to show a bunch of quotes in a PowerPoint presentation, I'm going to show you more of the graphics and talk around those and fill in some of the responses with quotes. So the biggest barriers to question 2, insufficient funding. This comes up over and over. We don't have enough money. We like to do it cheaper. We don't know how to do that. Inability to reduce pollutant sources. You need to keep that in mind when about trading. Moderate or major problems that vary with public support. And it is messing up the thoughts here. There's a question mark there. That wasn't in the. I'm a math person, so when I switch over, it hurts. On the opportunity side, wider use of pollution prevention / source reduction came out very high in terms of an opportunity to improve water quality. Better training and education, then things taper off a bit. Not too much on MS4 regulation. That wasn't a major, not an opportunity and actually not that big a barrier. Okay, so next. And this is one I don't use in other slides. It was really to get a sense of, is the problem just money? Is it the regulatory process? Or is it a knowledge gap? Or maybe something else? So we did ask a set of questions on the MS4 program. So this asked, for these issues, like your jurisdiction's administrative support, is it high, very high? But this came out a little murky, so I rearranged this, and I also looked at the ratio of high and very high to low and very low. Okay, so this is the bigger the bar, the higher. Oh yeah, the better off you are. So your jurisdiction's administrative support, most schools say fine, we're doing good. Access of knowledge to implement, we're doing fairly well. Effectiveness of improving stormwater quality, now we're dropping away, down a lot. Resources to implement regulations. Sense of unnecessary regulatory burden, not real high. Minnesota support is down lower, and public support, and cost efficiency. Okay, cost efficiency comes up over and over again. We did not do much more with the FPCA support issue. Okay. Barriers to insufficient funding, we did map out some of these things. I'm not going to say a lot of these, but basically everywhere there's a barrier. You know, people don't seem to have enough money for the most part to do their MS4 programs. This question, I believe, we asked just for the MS4 people. And next. So it's a statewide issue. That's something we want to highlight. You do next.
Is the next.
Oh, okay. Another map, and again, I'm slowly triangulating to this pollution trading issue. Inability to reduce pollutants. I thought that was kind of strange, you know, that was there, and it's also statewide. So next. Okay, now I want to zoom in just a little bit on this idea. One of the issues, we asked this of all MS4s and such, and so we had some early questions that we asked are, how urbanized are you? And it turns out that most of these respondents are in jurisdictions that are only half urbanized. So there's many, many cities, small towns, I think Albert Lee, for example, you have these nice chain of lakes right through the middle of the city, and they're draining, you know, thousands of square miles, or hundreds of square miles, of agricultural land. It's coming right into the city. Well, they can't control the pollutants because in the MS4 program, because the pollutants are coming mostly probably from agriculture. And there's many, many cities around the state where that is happening, including the fringe areas in the metro region. How high a contributor was agriculture? Well, again, almost half, you know, thought that agriculture was a major contributor. So this does bring up the issue of pollution trading. You know, could you trade urban non-point pollution, which is fairly regulated, with agriculture, which is not particularly well regulated, but might be easier to control, might be more efficient to control nutrients, particularly in agricultural settings, than in the urban settings where you're. Yeah. Farmers know a lot more about fertilizer than most homeowners do. Okay. Now, I'll put a couple clusters together here. Research on receiving waters, we're pretty uniform on the impact of potential threats, nutrients, suspended solids, bacteria, contaminated sediments, and road salt, then you get down to aquatic invasive species and such. There seems to be some real concern here. There's a quote, some really good guidance about monitoring methodology that would work better. This would be valuable and extend resources. I think there's some appeal because we feel better about where we're spending our time. You know, to know what's happening on the receiving water side. These people feel like, you know, they're doing work on the stormwater ponds and the other rain gardens and all that, but they don't know much about what impact that's having downstream. Chloride, again, comes out very high all around the state, which surprised me. I thought that was going to be a big red blob in the middle there, but it's not at all. Continue. And so in terms of what kind of research they want, there's, again, a theme that crosses over many areas. People want to know, what are the trends? What impact are we having? How efficient is it? We're spending the money. We don't mind spending the money necessarily, but we would like to see that we're getting something for it because our taxpayers are asking us, you know, what are we achieving here? And we're not getting it. So there has been a considerable interest, most in conventional pollutants, really. Some questions on research about ecosystem benefits. I don't know if you know, but that term is coming onto some criticism in the science community. But still, we want to know something about the benefits, whether it's just concentrations of phosphorus or chloride or some other benefit that maybe is defined more in terms of use. So, pretty clear there. If we move to case study 2, we have like 80 of these. I'm not going to show you all here. Structural BMP, here again, financial constraints, long-term maintenance, and those, of course, tied together. Just overwhelming response. You know, all those stormwater ponds, the rain gardens, all of that. I think having some information on life cycle of ponds would be huge. New research would give us information we need on that, especially for operation and maintenance 10 and 15 years. We don't have that information. So there is interest there. Some of the other things, this one really drops off. You know, the other stuff is not such a, quite so high. Now, let me just put a footnote here, and we'll talk about this later. This does not necessarily, again, looking through the lens of research, what are you going to do in operation maintenance research? You know, you might do more of it. You might track it better or something like that, but what is it in terms of research? Well, part of it is you're getting a lot of solids loading from erosion. Maybe this is a source reduction problem, not a pond maintenance problem. Because if you reduce the solids, you'll improve the maintenance, you'll decrease the maintenance. So we'll come back to that. For structural BMPs, now we're asking people in the previous one to rate each one individually. High, very high, low, very low. But when we ask them to pick out the single most important thing, again, these stick out. I don't necessarily, things are 5% apart. I don't consider that real. But here again, we're getting the top priority: design and performance of new innovative BMPs, and then cost and benefits of individual BMPs, and then which ties into long-term maintenance. So, again, people don't mind doing it, but they want to know what are the costs and what are the benefits. And we barely know the costs, much less the benefits. So, next. Then moving now to source reduction. I was a little surprised, because I don't work much with erosion, although John Chapman wasn't surprised, he works with it all the time, that I thought we dealt with this already. Sediment and suspended solids, we really haven't, because just about everybody thought there was a moderate or major opportunity here. Then phosphorus, then chloride, and then followed by nitrogen. And then, now these are about research, not just about what's your problem. You know, where do you think research could go? Barriers, practical barriers for implementation is overwhelmingly the biggest thing. Low public acceptance. I think some people think of source reduction in terms of behavioral change. We do have some barriers there. Perceived low potential for improving water quality. There's a number of people, the majority of the respondents felt that was a problem. Lack of technical knowledge. So a whole suite of things, because we don't do a lot of source reduction research. The importance of source reduction research, somewhat or varied. Chloride, nutrient reduction by street sweeping, erosion control, and I don't remember how this question got into it, but I don't understand the exact relationship with stormwater management, although I realize you have some leaching from composting and such. And I thought this one might come out higher. It seems it's time to do some research to see if that's actually worked. There's some indications that it has. I have been involved in a street project, so this is sort of up my alley. And I can say, you know, we have found in that study, which about 20 or so cities are starting to implement, that if you have a lot of trees and you have an important lake in that watershed, so nice leafy suburbs with a lake at the bottom, street sweeping can be very, very cost effective. And that's why one reason people are switching to it or moving towards in that direction. We're looking at cost in the order of $50 a pound of phosphorus versus many hundreds and even up to $1,000 per pound of phosphorus in stormwater basins and stuff. It's very efficient, very adaptive. You know, you increase it, you decrease it. Your agency has had some problems with documenting the people actually doing it. They might say they're going to do it, but how do you keep up on that? But the tide is changing. Mike Trojan and others are talking to us now about how we would do that. So that's moving forward. Chloride reduction is a huge problem. I don't know that we have a plan for getting to meeting water quality standards in some places. We're talking about 60-70% reduction needs, and that's pretty tough to come by. So, but doesn't mean we shouldn't do it. We need to do it. Okay, next. Again, these are just top priorities when you ask what is the most important. And you know, erosion control, you know, continuous. How do we keep this out of the sewers in the first place? I'm now living in St. Paul near the fairgrounds, 5 blocks in. And I have a catch basin right next to my house. I have a lot of trees. I watch those poor guys, the public works people, coming with those big sucker trucks, or vacuum trucks, in March, in these rubber suits, and it looks absolutely awful. And it seems like there's got to be a better way, you know, erosion and the nutrient ducts, keeping those leaves and that dirt and everything out of the sewers in the first place, driving, you know, a street sweeper or erosion control, you know, on the nice days in summer, rather than digging that stuff out at the end. So, and chloride, I don't know how many times I've been asked, what device should we put in to remove chloride? And the answer is, it's really pretty much nothing. It's very expensive to do that. Maybe if it were concentrated enough, like a brine pond or something like that, maybe, you know, you could do that. But you've got to keep it out of the street in the first place. Can you move forward? Policy research, I just through this one, and I had that in previous slides. The costs and benefits of BMD. What are we doing? What do I tell my city council? I'm spending, you know, X number of $1 million a year. They keep coming back and you still have to do this. You know, what's the benefit? The citizens aren't seeing it. We're not feeling it. You know, that seems to be the biggest problem. And then the statewide effectiveness, and these blend in. Yes, we want to know for our individual pond, but we also need to know for the watershed. You know, broadly, is the program succeeding in terms of improving water quality? Adaptive management approaches came in here, pollution trading for nutrient removal was not highly, it wasn't considered the highest priority, but I do think from the nuggets that we're getting along the way here that there is some potential value in doing that non-point trading with agriculture and municipal. I think there's some areas where you can achieve a lot with a very low investment. Remember what that would mean, if you're not familiar with point source pollution trading, is the entity, the jurisdiction that has a regulatory driver, in this case MS4 program, and a TMDL program. It's expensive for them to do it, but if they get somebody else to deal with part of the problem and pay them for it, to pay them less than they would have paid to do it themselves, you know, so to make it more cost effective, it can work, and it's legal. Some guidelines need to be worked out on non-point to non-point trading, but it's legal and it's very, very efficient. Go back to the acid rain days. We learned that you could do pollution trading with sulfur dioxide. That you didn't have to regulate every plant the same. You could basically buy and sell credits, and you can still do that. You can go to the Chicago Commodities Exchange and buy and sell the credits. So if you're rich enough, you could stop sulfur dioxide pollution in the United States by buying up all the credits and not selling them to everybody. But that, you know, when I was involved in a report to Congress on acid rain in late 80s, early 90s, they were estimating it was going to cost $50 to $100 billion a year for controls. But they were envisioning just putting a control stack, a scrubber on every plant. It turns out it's way cheaper to do pollution trading. Some plants said, well, we'll take that plant out of business, we'll build a newer, cleaner plant, or at that point, NSP, which is a power company up here, saw that this was going to happen and built excess capacity in terms of, they went below the proposed standard, and they were selling it to a place like Duke Power in North Carolina because they had an old coal-fired power plant. So it worked out real well. The net cost is now $2 to $3 billion. Okay, 50 to 100 versus 2 to 3 by trading and basically letting market economics drive the picture. Okay, next. We also ask people, you know, if we're writing an RFP or somebody's writing an RFP, what are the criteria that you use? The survey respond to effective and reliable, number of people impacted, and wide versus limited applicability. Not as important. This surprised me because research is often funded in firefights. Urgency was ranked very low. I think people seem to understand that it does take some time to do research. And depth of understanding, this was a disappointment. Depth of understanding wasn't particularly important. Just give me the model. I told me somebody in LCCMR, somebody told me in an LCCMR proposal to do some research and develop some tools. Well, can't we just get the tools? Wouldn't that be cheaper? We need the research to develop the tools. But that's what understanding sometimes isn't terribly important in the professional circles, I guess. I go the other way around. The more you understand, the broader your extractability. Interviews and focus groups, again, applicability and cost. So, these are not surprising, but it's useful, I think, to ask people what would criteria be. Now, I'll tell you why in just a moment. Oh, in 2 moments. Okay, here's right now. This is what the way these are our priorities. These are not in order. This is just by. We did 8 different areas, and this is one for each of them. This is now in review at MPCA. David Fairburn is coordinating that, and also outside. We have about half a dozen outside reviewers. Improved characterization of watershed and stormwater runoff. The more you know about where it's coming from, the more you can deal with that upstream, I guess. The effectiveness of stormwater management at the watershed scale, so not just the individual BMP, but the larger scale. To research to learn to reduce pollution at their source to improve the maintenance of structural BMPs. To reduce the maintenance of structural BMPs. To research to help with that. Research to develop new innovative stormwater management practices. We didn't talk much about that, but that's things like the iron-enhanced filters and various centrifugation devices and things like that. There's always a desire at research for a silver bullet. Give me one thing, boy, that's just going to change our world, and rarely happens like that. Develop linkage between behavioral change and water quality improvement. I did not talk about that. Sometimes this comes across, give us better education, better knowledge about behavior, human behaviors. That's not necessarily the whole issue. The question is, how do specific changes in behavior affect specific aspects of water quality? I would argue that if you develop a tailored education, I have argued in the literature, that if you develop a tailored advice on guidelines on fertilizer lawn management, you'll do much better than giving the same guidelines to everybody. So envision one guy lives on a flat prairie landscape with 50 feet or 100 feet of prairie lush underneath. He can do pretty much whatever. It's not going to make that much difference. But another person is living on a clay slope next to a lake, and he's what we call a perfectionist homeowner. And some people would say, well, just get him to do prairie planting. Well, some guy grew up like that. We guys get our lawn management behavior from our dads, and they get it from their dads. So if you were 50 years into this, and somebody says, well, just let the thistles grow or something, it's not going to happen. You've got to be consistent with what their fundamental ideas are. But that same person might be willing, instead of mulching clippings, might be willing to remove clippings. Because we know when those clippings decompose, they're going to release phosphorus right next to the lake. That guy might do that practice, whereas the guy maybe next to him is a very, very casual guy, doesn't fertilize, say, well, I don't need to fertilize, I'm saving the world. No, you're not. That's creating erosion. Brian Horgan from our horticulture department will tell you that. You are creating more, he can show you data, you're creating more phosphorus going into the lake. That guy needs to be coached to do a little fertilizer and manage the lawn so there's not erosion. So it's very different. But that connection, there's been very, very little research on that. I don't know of anyone who's published papers that says, yes, we changed, here's behaviors we changed, and here's the water quality impact. If you have that paper, show it to me. I have not seen it. I've seen one like 10 houses or something like that that looks like they might have had some impact. Okay. And then improve stormwater management policies. Would things like pollution trading work? Would adaptive management work instead of more sort of engineering-oriented TMDL process? Okay, next. And then just flip this through a couple times. I screwed up mine. Okay. Now, so we have stakeholders, we have focus groups, and so forth. There's a sphere here that encompasses all of their ideas. As I said earlier, one of the things we could have done is everybody just takes a vote, and the one who gets the highest votes wins. Well, that's not a very good way of doing it because of the necessity for translating barriers and problems into research. So we're looking at this through the lens of a researcher, and that brings us in a little bit. And some things, you don't have enough money, well, that's not really a research question. So we're bringing that in, and we're also triangulating between different groups and different problems. Like I say, with pollution trading, yeah, I got a chunk of the pie, but there was a lot more behind that in other questions in terms of barriers and opportunities and urbanization and things like that. So when we do these rankings or these priorities, we're clearly have to interpret that through the lens of research. On the other hand, we're doing it in a fairly transparent way so that one could look at our data and say, well, I'd reach a different conclusion, a legislator or one of you guys or something. So, and then I think this next one's the last. One possibility for how some of this might work, the Water Resources Center has actually developed this external advisory group, Stormwater Research Council. It's actually having one of its first meetings, public meetings in a couple of weeks. The model that we envision here, Jeff Peterson is now the director of the Water Resources Center. He's aware of this. It's something like what they do in the Center for Transportation Studies. There are research-sponsored watershed districts that come to us, the university, and said, guys, I can't fund a $300,000 study, but I could chip in 50. And a number of people are saying, I could chip in 50, I could chip in 100 or whatever. And then there's the Clean Water Legacy Fund, which in the past year has put in $1.5 million. What would be very good from everybody's standpoint is to channel all this into one place, have the Water Resources Center be an honest broker. By that I mean no one on that council is a researcher. These are people from outside the university, or at least outside research. So the research sponsors could come in and say, well, we need to know more about lawn maintenance. That's our issue. We're 2, 3, or 4 issues a year. We have X amount of money, and the Water Resources Center then does the paperwork for this and compiles these knowledge needs and gives them to the advisory council. The council probably creates the RFP, feeds it back to the Water Resources Center, which sends out RFPs. We write proposals that go back to the Water Resources Center. They compile them and clean them up a little bit and send them to the advisory committee, which then makes selects projects, and then the money goes to the researchers. Reports come back to the Water Resources Center. You do all the reports in a standardized way, and then the findings go out to the research sponsor. With the research sponsors interacting with the Center for Transportation Study, there are people at MnDOT on those technical advisory panels, as well as people from the various agencies and stuff. So Jeff is in the process of implementing this. It's great for agencies, especially smaller agencies or groups like watershed districts. They can contribute to a bigger pot and get more impact than they would just doing a small study on their own. A lot of agencies don't know how to act with it. They want one-stop shopping, so they don't have to run around trying to figure out who's the right researcher to approach, or put out a sort of one-time spamming RFP, give us one of these 15 topics and we'll evaluate it, and you really don't know what they're interested in. We hate those at the university. When you don't want so specific that you only have one possibility for a project, but you don't want it so general that it could be anything and you're just throwing it out there and seeing what sticks. The university is fairly good at doing this kind of thing, and the advisory group, these are sophisticated folks that would be doing this. So that's where we hope to end up shortly. And I think that's the last slide. I'm pretty sure that's the last slide. Yeah, there were some hidden slides, but okay. I shuffled the deck depending on which group I'm talking to, so I'm not quite sure if that was the last slide. Okay, we have about 15 minutes for questions. Burning questions? That was a lot of material very quickly.
I have a question about the partnering with the human aspect of this. there a thought about connecting in with people outside the kind of water resources expertise, bringing them in to kind of, I think there's a huge potential to kind of crowdsource, to kind of cover a lot of gaps with kind of connecting to the individuals that are, part of the, contribution of the problem, connecting them to the actual resources, all those type of things. I think there's a long ways to go, but it's more of a psychological human nature place versus an engineering, city maintenance, all those type of things that become, I think, kind of a long-term financial challenge.
Engineers, yes, I do work between two disciplines. We did something called the Twin Cities Household Ecosystem Project. It ended, it was about a 4-year, 5-year project. It ended a couple of years ago, and we did have an environmental psychologist, Kristen Nelson, working with her. And we looked very closely at what's called path analysis, where you look, what are the factors motivating lawn management behavior. And we surveyed 3,000 households. It was a big survey. We got response from 3,000 households. We surveyed 15,000. And we asked a lot of questions about lawn management. And we learned, for example, that when I made a statement about, it's usually the men doing the men. If there's 2 people in the house, it's usually the guy. And it's usually your dad that you're probably mowing the lawn, and that might have been, at least in my generation. The way you regard trees and stuff, whether you have them or not, it's probably a reflection of your parents, as well as your income. More trees, more dollars, so plant trees. And we looked at how many times people applied fertilizer, nitrogen fertilizer, and stuff like that. So we wrote a paper, Martinez, that was a couple of years ago, a postdoc wrote a paper called Why Feed the Lawn? So we have looked at this kind of thing. What we weren't able to do, and it'd be very actually difficult to do, is how then does that change water quality? You would either want to measure runoff coming off individuals' lawns, who now know that you're measuring the runoff coming off their lawn. It's impossible to do that clandestinely, nor would it be legal probably. So you maybe have to do like a neighborhood, a cul-de-sac, something like that. And so you want to look at what messages did you have, what behaviors actually changed before and after, and then did that make a difference in water quality? That connection is where I think the problem is, and the reason we haven't done it, I think, is largely because this is so engineering problem. The same people who developed the original stormwater pond, and to some extent even the ones now, the stormwater practices, are the same people who learned sewage treatment in engineering school, civil engineers, civil environmental engineers. And people I've been talking about source reduction for 10 years, and some of these guys just glaze over. You can't get people to stop it. I asked, where do you think nutrients in streets come from? I asked one presentation kind of like this. They said, well, exhaust. I said, no, there's no phosphorus in exhaust, or very little. Well, I don't know. The sky. I said, no, that's a minor component for phosphorus, the atmospheric composition. I said, it's coming from the lawns. He said, well, it doesn't matter. We can't control that. Well, I said, you can't, because you're an engineer. But I have friends who can do that, figure out how to get people to change their behaviors. But that connection, that interdisciplinary connection, very different kinds of people, in terms of the way they study things and everything else. It's very difficult to make that connection, and almost impossible to get funding for it. But I do think that's if we're really going to get to greatly reduce urban stormwater pollution or improve urban water quality, I think it's going to have to be based on the way we live our lives on our properties. By the way, one of Bob Sterner's students, Ann Holback, did a thesis on the phosphorus fertilizer ban, and I'd say it's a little bit tentative. It's a master's thesis, and it didn't have all the data she needed, but it looks like that might be having an effect now. And boy, was that cheap. That's basically zero cost. And there weren't a lot of complaints about it. Everybody thought there was going to be huge battles over this. And there were battles, but nothing huge. And, it looks like that may have been effective. You would predict, based from the way phosphorus is cycled in lawns, that it would not have worked right away, at least not very well, because much of the phosphorus is stored in the soils, and once it's cut off the external phosphorus supply, they'll recycle, the grass will recycle it over and over, and a little bit dribbles out as stormwater pollution. So you'd predict that it would take 10 or 20 years. But that looks like it might be happening. You'd want to redo something, a study, but this is the kind of thing we should be looking at the data very, very closely. And you know, not only did it change, but why did it change? Yeah.
Do we know how much of an impact picking up the animal waste, the pet waste, has done?
Yeah. Your neighbors won't hate you.
Well, yeah, that's the water quality.
Yeah. Water quality. You know, it's very, very difficult to show. I mean, we know how much phosphorus there is in dog poop. I've done that, not by measuring dog poop, but by estimating how much dogs eat. Purina will help you out with that, and then therefore how much nitrogen is coming out the other end, nitrogen phosphorus is coming out the other end. It's a steady state if the dog is an adult. So we know how much is there, and it's actually, now that we've cut out the phosphorus, the fertilizer input into the watershed, I'm not talking about into the street, right, but into the watershed, dog poop is now the major landscape input. Now that's not as big as human food, but that doesn't go into landscape, that goes into sewage. But right now, that's the biggest input in the Twin Cities area. That's the biggest input to urban landscapes is dog poop. Now, where does that go? You know, I don't know. I would think they would have an effect, particularly where they're going very near the street and such. So enforcing that also makes sense because there's a lot of bacteria, including Giardia and stuff, in dog poop. Dogs can have they don't get sick, but they carry it. Giardia, and Giardia is, I haven't got it, but one friend did, and it's not a disease you want to get, ever. It won't kill you, but it will make you wish you were dead. So, yes, we need to do that, but I think more from a health standpoint, then that would probably be the better driver. When you have contaminated beaches and stuff, you know, that stuff's coming from somewhere. Can't prove it. People are working on that, but my guess is that it's causing significant contamination.
What about buffer strips? When was this survey
a year ago.
done?
A year ago.
A year ago?
Yeah. Buffer strips, you know, I always raise the question on these natural treatment systems, whether it's a wetland, buffer strips, stormwater ponds. You accumulate, you're not getting rid of, you are not treating, you are not removing pollutants, you're storing them. Okay? There's no magic about a buffer strip. You know, water comes into it over land, it goes through the buffer strip, assuming that it gets trapped, you know, it doesn't channel and go right through, you're going to build up over time phosphorus. The soil test level, so STP, of the soil is going to increase over time. And everything we know about soil and phosphorus says when that goes up, you're going to get more runoff. So it'll delay a response. You know, it will trap for a period of time. The grass will grow, and people say, well, it's being removed by vegetation. Not if you're not harvesting it. It's going right back to the soil. You know, and as long as you're doing that, you've got phosphorus coming in. Eventually, you will store it for quite a while, but eventually it's going to leak out. So I think sometimes with buffer strips, people conflate all kinds of things they'd like to see, you know, like butterflies and pheasants and therefore phosphorus, and I don't think it works. I don't think it's a good way of getting rid of phosphorus unless you plan to harvest. I've always wondered, why doesn't somebody just have these very long agricultural ditches and stuff, plant alfalfa and remove it, harvest it. You know, have one guy with a tractor getting paid, you know, to go along, just harvest the whole thing and feed the cows. You know, then it's used for something. It replaces some of the phosphorus that would have been grown somewhere else and goes into a cow. But that's usually not the way we do it. Now, nitrogen, on the other hand, because that gets some of it can be denitrified. That goes up in the air, and at least there's no water pollution anymore. That's different. I mean, wetlands are, for example, are very, very good at removing nitrogen. They're not so good at phosphorus. People have shown that, at least with wastewater, that wetlands, treatment wetlands will get saturated, and then the phosphorus levels will go up. So there's other reasons why one might want buffer strips, but I'm not convinced you can get a lot of phosphorus removal over the long term. I like pheasants. I like butterflies. I plant butterfly plants.
When you were looking at your survey data from like what were like the motivators behind people's lawn care practices, you mentioned yourself as like your father's practice. Was the trend oftentimes related to what other people around them were doing?
Yeah.
So it's like
if you've ever thought that my wife says, well, you don't have to, cut the lawn, just go for a couple more days, or we're renting a property now. We got rid of our suburban house, and I said, well, I actually got there and put some weed killer down on the lawn. It's something wrong. I said, well, we don't have to do that. He said, no, but they're not looking at you. They're looking at me. My neighbor's looking at the fence, and they say, hey, you got weeds, guy. They might not say it, but they're thinking that, and they are thinking that. That's when we ask people. That was one of the main motivators. What do your neighbors think? Your dad and your neighbors.
But I feel like that's an opportunity for, if the trend starts to go towards better water quality practices, whether it's, rain barrels, rain gardens, that becomes the new thing to do. You would see everyone start to adopt it or see that as typical.
If you could see, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's
although weeds are probably never going to be real popular. I mean, random weeds. It's one thing to do a lawn cover of some sort.
Yeah, it's kind of a balance.
Yeah. There's a bit of a problem there, and also Brian Horgan would say those weeds, they're not. They're creating erosion stuff. There's bare spots and stuff like that, and that's not good for grass. Now, people are not, on the other hand, fertilizing excessively. We ask people how many times they fertilize, and we assume that they were applying it at the rate that's recommended. There's no way to know that, but we assume that. But they're typically, most people are fertilizing with nitrogen, either 0 or 1 time a year. A few 2, and way fewer 3 and 4. The fertilizer, the commercial spreaders, were over-applying at the time. And we've communicated with some of them, and I think they've reduced, but they were over-applying. And most people aren't out there 4 or 5 times. And frankly, I think one motivator there is, I hate doing that. If once is enough, that's fine with me. 0, you'll start eventually to get lawn breakup problems. You need some nitrogen. So doing it once or twice is probably a good idea. Doing it 4 or 5 times is absolutely unnecessary. And we've shown that given the growth patterns, watering patterns, stuff like that, you can't use 4 applications of nitrogen. Your grass cannot use it. It's mathematically impossible, especially when you get to 5. So there's absolutely no reason for doing it. And we've communicated that too to watershed districts and stuff. But the behavioral thing, I think, is a new frontier, and I do think people jump on board, especially where things are visible. A lot of electric cars around right now.
I think that's a good parallel. Yeah.
Yeah, recycling too. The recycling bins were all involved. If everybody was on the block, but you didn't have your blue bin out, all of a sudden they start putting out the bin, and there's very little in it, but they're part of the club.
Well, we did another study on the source-separated organics in Minneapolis when they started their pilot program a couple of years ago. And we surveyed people who participated and people who didn't. And got 60% responses in both cases. But the first round, it was voluntary. Half the people participated. That's not bad. Coming from 0 to 50% is not bad. And one of the messages there is we ask people what the barriers were, what the problems were. Does it stink? Is it hard to get rid of? And all that. And basically the people who are participating perceived lower barriers. They didn't think these things were really big problems, or at least considerably less. People who weren't participating, at least in part, probably weren't participating because they did perceive these barriers. I also think, although we didn't analyze it closely enough, I think people like myself who do a lot of cooking, are more likely to compost than people eating out of, TV dinners or whatever you call them now. They're not going to do that because they're not going to be able to recycle much. I got cabbage leaves, potato peelers, the whole bit. I could have compost bin in 2 days.
Yes, there's an individual potential. that people have to make a difference.
And again,
Different various from house to house,
Yeah.
from kitchen to kitchen, whatever for that.
again, you could, if you wanted to increase participation, you could quickly identify, who did a lot of cooking, and who has more people in the house, and give them a free bin, a little compost bin, $10 or so. In California, they found that with water conservation, we have a lot of experience altering people's behaviors. You could raise the water prices and have restrictions and everything else. But if you give them a $5 shower head, you got something for free. It's great. Even though your water bill just went up $100. So that carrot and stick approach there works. And knowing in California, knowing that what you're doing is necessary. That we have a water crisis. If you don't do something, we're going to have a bigger water crisis. And they do block grants, block rate billing. So if the first 100 cubic feet is a very low rate, and in Irvine, at least, California, the highest water use is 8 times higher per block. It's 8 times. It's 80 cents versus $8. That's why there aren't very many swimming pools in Irvine, California. So there's the financial, the carrot, the stick, but that carrot doesn't have to be a real big carrot. And targeting, who is really creating the compost, who is really creating the problem. I think you can geographically target which lawns very easily, from slope and a few other things. Don't bother with everybody. Just get the ones that look like they might be creating a lot of problems. So, this is a new frontier.
We're out of time.
Okay.
Thanks a lot, Larry, for coming over and giving us your talk.